highlight of this afternoon is our talk with Congressman C.A. Dutch Ruppersberger. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He is serving his 7th term in the United States House of Representatives for the citizens of Maryland's 2nd District. Dutch is known as a common sense consensus builder who works with members from both sides of the aisle to get results for Maryland and to get results for the nation. I had the pleasure and privilege to go with him as his guest to the State of the Union address in January, and I saw firsthand how many people Dutch knows on both sides of the aisle and how well he was received. And it's really, I'm sure he's going to talk about it a little bit more today. That's what's so important, and I think that's what's missing in Congress, and we've had a lot of conversations about that, but it was an unbelievable experience to be there. Dutch currently serves on the powerful House Appropriations Committee, including the Defense and State, Foreign Operations, and related programs subcommittees. The Appropriations Committee is responsible for allocating hundreds of billions, let me repeat that again, hundreds of billions of federal dollars each year. And this assignment comes after a committee record 12 years of serving on the House Intelligence Committee, including 4 years as the ranking member. Dutch served here with Mike Rogers on the other side, and if you watched any TV back then on CNN, MSNBC, all the channels, Dutch was talking about intelligence. He was the first Democratic freshman ever appointed to the committee, which oversees the collection and analysis of intelligence from around the world to ensure our national security and prevent potential crisis situations, especially terrorist activities. Dutch has traveled to more than 50 different countries, including Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, China, and Venezuela during his time on the committee. And if you get a chance, ask Dutch about some of those trips. And some of the guys here that's been to Dutch's fundraiser before, he'll tell you there's some really interesting ones, especially about the one with Gaddafi. By the way, not Bermuda. Okay. Dutch has served in public office for more than 30 years. He's a native of Baltimore City. Spent his summers as a lifeguard and police officer in Ocean City, Maryland. He attended Baltimore City College and the University of Maryland down in College Park, where he played lacrosse, and he was a great, great lacrosse player. He also earned his Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Baltimore School of Law. And Dutch has been married for 46 years to his high school sweetheart, Kay Murphy. You were married when you were 10 or 11, was it, Dutch, or 12? Together they have 2 grown children, Corey and Jill, and 3 grandchildren. Please welcome, everybody, my good friend, Dutch Ruppersberger.
Well, CEO Club, I know a lot about you because Doug is a neighbor of mine, and he's very proud of this organization and the networking and relationships that you do develop. What I'm going to do is kind of give a formal speech. I won't bore you too much, but I think you have to stay on the facts and data, and then I'm going to open up for questions and anything you want to talk about. You want to talk about the Ravens game tonight? You want to talk about the new president? Whatever you like to talk about, that's fine. First thing, Doug, I want to say some things about you. You're a great friend, and people here know you're a fearless leader. You're a man of your word and you're a man of action, and that's really important, especially in what I do in politics. I am finished. And I've always respected Doug. You're a self-made man through and through, fellow Terp, which I like, fellow Terps, that's great. A published author, as we know, a respected consultant, a determined advocate for mental health services, and, again, what's really important, my personal friend. Now, he happens to be my neighbor, and one thing, not exactly next door, but in the same neighborhood. And one thing that amazes me about him, when I'm leaving to go to D.C., and sometimes it takes me 2 hours in the morning, I see Doug jogging. He's one of these neighbors that makes you feel bad and whatever. And I see him and I wave, and he's there just, I don't know, freezing rain this morning, I'm sure. But it kind of makes me feel bad because when I see Doug, about 5 minutes before I get on the road to Washington, I stop by Dunkin' Donuts. and with a double latte with extra cream, but I don't feel that bad, to be honest. And that's what you need to get going. But Doug, I'm really honored that you asked me to come today, and I really value our friendship. And the political business, he's helped me a lot. And there are a lot of people in this room who've supported me, and I want to thank you all. One of the three things I hate about politics is that the damn traffic, sometimes 2.5 to 3 hours. If it's Friday, it's 3 hours, no matter what time you leave. You know, I don't like the partisan politics. When the election's over, I work with, I think politics should be at relationships, trust, and end game and get things done. And I hate raising money. I don't mean to be crude, but, you know, you feel like a prostitute, but you got to ask for it. And my chief of staff back there, Tara Osler, has been with me for 20 years, helps coordinate, you know, Dutch Incorporated, which ethically she's allowed to do the fundraising too. And Ashley, we'll talk about you later in this speech, who's my, who just came to work for us. Well, I'll say it now. When I was county executive, you're out every day, all the time. You're in local government. You're touching the people. The local government's where the rubber meets the road. But when you're in Washington, and especially in my job on the Intelligence Committee and Defense of Probes, I have to travel to all these hotspots throughout the world. So when we're off a week, I'm usually traveling. So it's extremely important that I have outreach people who work for me that come to all these events and network. And Ashley had just came to work for us, and we're really looking forward to that. And you'll be seeing her whenever there are functions you represent me. So Ashley, there's the two there. I did it early because, you know, a lot of times I'll give a speech, and I'm giving a pretty big speech, and I forget to introduce my wife. And I forget and walk off. Oh, my gosh, you know, what? After 47 years, you need to do that sometimes, but whatever. Now, when I was looking through your list of business leaders who are here today, it impressed me the diversity of the services that you do add. And I think that's really unique because you're here to develop relationships, to network, to make a difference, to help your business. And to let you know also, I made a payroll, and I understand that. And I think that helped me when I was Baltimore County Executive, because I think we'd be a lot better off if a lot of people who are in management positions, you know, have made a payroll, and you understand things a lot differently. I also want to acknowledge my friend and a really good buddy, and I don't know how long Hirsch has been here, but Hirsch Goldberg, who was my media person when I first started to run, and he came with me for county executive for a while. And then Peter Angelo's hired you away, and Hirsch, you've done a lot of books too, I know that. So a lot of books around this place. Maybe that's part of the CEO club. But you know, you from real estate to banking, construction, communication. It's really unique. You know, there are different types of groups in this town, but this is a good group, and I'm glad you're all here and supporting each other. Now, when I usually speak to groups, it's usually about national security. I actually represent NSA. I'm the first one that ever represented them that they could talk to. I mean, it's literally in my district. And then when I got on the Intelligence Committee, you oversee the CIA, NSA, all the space programs, all of those different things. But NSA I was just there last week for a day just to go over their issues and to look over their budgets. And then on defense appropriations, we are involved in everything from space, all the intelligence groups, all the wars, you know, that type of thing. And the good news about that committee and intelligence is that the stakes are so high, it is bipartisan. You hear a lot of the things we don't get in that committee, both in defense and national security. Most of the times we get along, and that's good for our country. Now, I've made it, whenever I'm speaking to a group of executives, though, and I want to point this out, I'm always reminded of a friend of mine who was opening a satellite branch of his insurance agency. And a friend of his sent flowers for the occasion. Well, that was pretty nice. They arrived at the new business site, but when the owner read the card, it said, "Rest in peace." Well, my friend, the business owner, was really angry, and he called the florist to complain. And after he told the florist of the obvious mistake and how angry he was, the florist said, "Sir, I'm really sorry for the mistake, but rather than getting angry, you should consider this. Somewhere there's a funeral going on today, and they have flowers with a note saying, 'Congratulations on your new location.'" You got to put one of those in every speech, too. So that's important. Now, we've just come from a really long and negative campaign season. My style, usually in politics, is to be positive. You know, talk about, hopefully people will elect you based on your past record and what you stand for and what you've done, and not the negative record in politics. And I had one of those negative elections myself this year, but I did stay positive. I don't know if you saw any of my ads, television ad, but I had my 94-year-old mother there. And I got more people coming up to me. You go to the mall, we go to the grocery, oh, your mother was great, your mother was great. And she is 94, she still drives, but we do put a siren out when she's on the road, so you'll be okay. Now, whether you're part of the Never Trump movement, the Crooked Hillary campaign, or where where you're in the middle, we all understand that when our president succeeds, America succeeds. I think President Obama said it right about Trump. He said, look, if he's successful, America's successful. And we are a democracy. We still are the strongest democracy in the world. Now, I disagree with Trump about that, make us the greatest country in the world. We are. We can always improve. But if we're a democracy, we have to take the results of our democracy. And hopefully, the partisan politics is going to have to stop. Now, we know Trump has a heck of a learning curve in a lot of different areas. But we've got to maintain our country. He is the leader, and hopefully we'll work with him. And I'm going to commit to myself that I'm going to do whatever I can to help him, and especially in my area of expertise, which is national security and also in the appropriations area. Now, Trump said on election night, he said that now is the time to bind the wounds of division and come together as one united people. And soon, again, we'll have the opportunity to translate those words into action. One of the suggestions I would have is he stops tweeting, but that gets him in trouble. One of the messages from this election is that Americans want to see their government solve problems and pledge, and again, as I said, I think we all have to pledge, understand that this is not, he doesn't understand a government and what it is to be the leader of the strongest country in the world and the obligations that are there, and for all Americans, not just one group or another. And I think people, if you look at history, and it's good to study history, Lyndon Johnson was not a very nice person. He was a nasty, mean person, and that was his reputation. He was allegedly to be corrupt. I don't have the facts. I'm saying allegedly now to be corrupt. But when JFK was killed and he became president, he became a tremendous president. And maybe because of his personality or whatever, a lot of the problems that people didn't like about him, but he became a great president. He passed civil rights legislation. He did things that other people just couldn't do because of his personality and because of the way that he lived his life, but he made a good president. And I'm hoping the same thing with Trump. I'm a part of a bipartisan group that we're going to communicate with Trump, including a letter, letting him know that we're just going to stand ready to work with him on day one to solve our country's problems. Now, these are friends of mine that we've come together. More of us are moderate. Unfortunately in Washington, you have the far left and you have the far right. And then there are those of us in the middle that we would try to get things done. But again, that's because we care about getting things done. Congress has to do that, and hopefully this what's happened now might make us come together, hopefully. Now, those of us who signed this letter are the ones willing, as I said, to reach across the aisle. This partisan ideologue issue in Washington clearly is what is hurting our country, because it's never end game. It's just about our idealistic point of view. And it's a shame most people didn't start in local government. I was in local government for 17 years. And in those 17 years, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where people care about their schools, their children, their infrastructure, all the basic things, about their businesses. And when you go, when I went to Washington, I was really shocked at how partisan people are. Like all Republicans will never vote to raise a tax. I don't like raising taxes. When I was county executive, I never did. But if I had to, because it meant helping in education or police or fire or something like that. So, and yet on our side, on the left side, it's just as bad. Some of these idealist positions that are unreasonable, not holding people accountable on what needs to be done. And hopefully now we will see that it's about what's right for America. And I do, one of the things, the positive things and this is going back to my business days, I'm not even going back to, is the issue of regulation. I think we're over-regulated. Everywhere we go, we're over-regulated. You put regulations in to be fair and make things fair, but the way it is right now, it's really hurting our country, and I think that might be a positive as long as we do it in a balanced way. Now, my personal philosophy is you work for your team, an election in the Democratic team, and when the election's over, you work together and serve your constituents, because that's the bottom line. You're being elected by the people. Now, I do have I have as many friends on the Republican side as the Democratic side. And I keep telling some of my people on my side, you know, you got to be smart, because if you're in the minority and you don't have any friends on the Republican side, you're not going to get anything done. And, you know, it's important, whether you're Democratic district or Republican district, you have the same needs, whether it's schools, infrastructure, it's transportation, jobs, all these type of things. So hopefully, and I really believe in this thing about, you know, in my day, I've been tough. I've played at sports. I mean, you know, you have to fight for things that you want. But when you're looking at politics and you look at United States history, you know, I believe that we need more fixing and less fighting. And I think if we try to resolve issues instead of trying to win all the time, that would make this country a lot better. Now, January 20th, the president's going to have a lot of issues competing for his attention. And I think some of these issues will be non-starters, but others have the potential to bear real results. In our letter to Trump, we ask him to pursue the path of inclusion by prioritizing 2 issues in particular that can provide immediate wins for our country. And those are, number 1, rebuilding America's infrastructure. It's a no-brainer, creates jobs, it makes such a difference. And if you look all of our history, Eisenhower, I mean, infrastructure just really helps our country. And the second one is reforming our tax code. Now, these 2 are sure bets when it comes to putting Americans back to work and good-paying jobs. As many of you know, as business owners, America's aging infrastructure combined with complicated and outdated tax codes are huge barriers to investment and to hiring. Knocking these barriers down would not only give a substantive boost to our economy, it would also send a powerful signal to the American people that Washington can actually get results. Now, these 2 issues are perfect complements because comprehensive tax reform could free up significant capital for infrastructure as well as other investments to help business invent, innovate, and hire. Now, tax reform, most Americans agree that the U.S. tax code is broken. It takes the average American 13 hours to do their taxes each year. And for those who know me, every time I go, I always overpack, but who know me, that's about as long as it takes for me to pack a suitcase for one night in Ocean City. Little joke. I agree with President-elect Trump that we need fewer brackets and lower rates. And because we have mostly CEOs in the room, not all, but mostly, let's talk about our corporate taxes specifically. The U.S. corporate tax rate, 39.1%, is the highest in the developed world, and it's been that way since 2007. This is stifling businesses' ability to create jobs and to innovate. And let's not forget innovation, how important innovation. I represent NSA, and most of the contractors that are there, and there's some maybe in this room. And our innovation allows us to be the strongest country in the world because we're competing every day with Russia, China, and a lot of other countries. I believe we need to reduce the corporate tax rate so that it is competitive with other countries and pay for it by eliminating some of the special interest tax credits and deductions. You've got to find a way. Everybody has to agree. Nobody's going to like everything. We've got to find a way, though, to fix the tax code. Now, as far as infrastructure, over the past 3 decades, the United States has underinvested. This is the past 3 decades now, has underinvested in maintaining and upgrading our infrastructure. Our roads, bridges, airports, water, sewer systems, rail lines, schools, on and on. We had $180 billion in unmet needs just last year alone. The American Society of Civil Engineers grades our country's infrastructure a D+. Hey, we got a plus, right? I mean, what the heck? But that's serious, and it's really, it's tough, and it's wrong. Studies show that an average highway projects, you know, if you live in the region, the Baltimore Beltway, as an example, but the average highway takes 8 years to get through the regulatory process. And by the time they are approved, the costs have doubled from the original estimates. I see that on the Appropriations Committee all the time. I fight like the dickens because you're competing with other states for our state, and especially for our Baltimore region, to get road projects going, things that need to be done on a regular basis. 70, you know, when you're coming 70 east, and it comes into 1 lane, and that's backed up. I mean, the west side of the Baltimore Beltway is just like living in New York City. I mean, you know, it just gets clogged all the time. But yet, even when you have money in the budget, and we're starting with money in the budget right now, and it's already in there, it sometimes takes that long. Hopefully, the new president, will be able to fix this and make sure that we move quickly if we move forward. Now, and the reason we have decades-old state, local, and federal regulations that often contradict each other or repeat each other or are just out of date. We need to streamline the process so that we aren't wasting precious resources on getting through the red tape. Everybody agree with that? Okay. We also have to streamline the funding process. It's clear that raising the federal gas tax to pay for infrastructure is never going to happen under a Republican-controlled Congress and a Republican president. Now, there's some friends of mine, more the moderates, who are willing to raise certain taxes if you can see a direct benefit. And I think, you know, if you look at raising a gas tax, which hasn't been raised for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, that's a use tax. But somehow you have to pay for it. If you look at why we didn't pay taxes and how we almost got into a depression, we were in 2 wars, and yet we didn't pay for those 2 wars. And in a couple of years, well, how many years ago has it been now? We almost went into a depression because we didn't pay. If you're going to do something, you got to pay for it. Also, if you're going to grow, you know, as business people, you have to invest. Now, Maryland's 6th district representative is John Delaney. Anybody know of John Delaney? He represents the Montgomery County area and also Western Maryland. He's a unique individual. He is extremely wealthy. He is the youngest person to take 2 companies to the New York Stock Exchange, not 1 but 2. And he's very active in the Washington metropolitan area. But we work and talk a lot together. We're the 2 moderates in Maryland, I guess, and we vote a lot. Like, we're pro-business, and he helps me with the cyber and the military and that type of thing. And he has been a leading voice in our party for leveraging greater private investment in our failing infrastructure. And remember, Maryland used to be one of the best in the country, and we are slipping now. Now, we have some great examples here in Maryland about how we can use a different mechanism in investing and bonds and the way we do things. The rest stops at I-95 and the Port of Baltimore expansion were done with public-private investment. There are incentives to do that, and it works. Delaney's plan uses repatriated, which is money brought back to the country, corporate profits now held overseas to replenish the Highway Trust Fund and create a new infrastructure bank that will be available to state and local governments. As the Baltimore Sun recently pointed out, the beauty of this plan is that it spares the Republicans from raising taxes, which they usually won't do, even though we need certain issues like infrastructure, and still contributes to traditional government-managed infrastructure. This is a plan that hopefully we'll be able to move forward with. These companies, when they bring back their money, it's taxed at about 39%. And under this plan, they can bring the money back. If they say have $1 billion that they're holding in another country, they don't want to bring it back to be taxed. When they bring it back, they're going to have an 8% one-time tax from 39 to 8. I think this will give a tremendous incentive for most of the billions of dollars that these American companies have in other parts of the world, and this will go directly targeted into a trust fund for infrastructure. In my opinion, it's a win-win. And you know, if the Sun paper, and we've all been the victims sometimes, and we all agree with them sometimes, but if they've agreed to this, I mean, it's something I think that we're really moving. Those of us who are Democrats and Republicans who are more moderate are really trying to help John move this forward. Now, another infrastructure issue dear to my heart is the issue of municipal bonds. It's an issue I've been championing along with a Republican from Illinois. His name's Randy Holtgren, and he also served in local government. And together we formed what they call a mini finance caucus, a municipal finance caucus. And the caucuses are when you come together with members of Congress who specialize in one area. I happen to be co-chair of the Army caucus, so we focus and help the Army in their budgeting. Well, this is on municipal bonds. And we've sent letters to the Speaker Ryan, Pelosi, and at least 140 of our colleagues, asking them to reject proposals to alter the tax-exempt status of municipal bonds. Now, municipal bonds are debt obligations issued by states, cities, counties, and other government entities. which use the money to build infrastructure like schools, highways, hospitals, sewers, systems, anything having to do with infrastructure. As Baltimore County, I oversaw all the capital projects, ranging from restoration of libraries that were burned, or parks. If you've ever taken Jones Falls Expressway, at the end, you see that huge park. Well, when I was county executive, I built 5 of those regional parks, and that was based on municipal bonds. And it's a concept that really, you have these municipal bonds, they help fund, and they're paid off over many, many years. So you're allowed to really, like you would when you buy a car and you finance your car. That's what we do. And it's really the one mechanism the the state and locals use to really fund most of what they do. When I was in local government, I would always see the feds press on the state presses on the locals, and the locals have no place to press. Well, municipal bonds would allow us to move forward with projects, and if they take away our ability to use municipal bonds anywhere in this country, we're going to have serious problems. And that means if we're going to keep moving ahead, building schools and the things that are necessary, we're going to have to raise the property tax, because that's usually the one entity that the locals use, and that would be a serious situation. So we're fighting and doing whatever we can to make sure we continue to deal that the big bad federal government won't come down and take away our municipal bonds. Now, talking about there are tools that we look for. Again, the municipal bond is one of the things that we use. And as lawmakers, we search for ways to reduce the deficit. And some have suggested limiting the value of tax benefits for top-earning investors, again, in the area of municipal bonds. And again, President Obama has wanted to reduce the municipal bonds 35 to 28%. The U.S. Senate is asking to do this, but we're going to make sure that we hopefully stop this. Chairman Brady, and he is, again, it's relationships, and he is the chairman of the tax committee called the Ways and Means Committee. And we're working, a lot of us monitors are working with him, so when the new president comes, we'll be able to roll up our sleeves and start making the decisions that are necessary. All right, now I'm going to stop and really get into defense spending, and then I'm going to open up for questions. I first applaud the president's pledge to increase defense spending, which is so important also to my district. Now, a lot of people on my side of the aisle aren't happy of defense spending. I believe whenever you manage in anything, even if it's your business, you want to manage to balance. If you go too far one way or go too far the other way. But we are in some of the most dangerous times that we've faced in this country. I deal with the directors of the CIA, the NSA, the people who run Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, all these people. And they'll all tell you that this is probably the most serious time that our world has faced. And, those threats are, first, you have nuclear weapons. Most people don't realize how serious nuclear weapons are. If Russia and China and the United States, if we ever get into a nuclear war, the world could be over. We have a lot of technology out there, and those 3 countries have defense mechanisms. We have enough defense mechanisms to stop maybe North Korea if they try to attack us on nuclear missiles, or maybe Iran. But when it comes to Russia, China, and the United States, there's not enough money, there's not enough resources. So we have to do whatever we can to stop this nuclear issue. And this is something, too, that I think and I have some issues, and I'll get into it if you want to ask me the questions, with Trump's relationship with Russia. It's of great concern to a lot of us for a lot of reasons. But it might be a good thing if he can use this relationship. He won't even say anything negative about him at all, not even hold him accountable. But we need to bring Putin, who in my opinion is one of the most dangerous people in the world. He's smart, he's cunning, he hates the fact the wall went down, he's an old KGBer. But if we could work through some issues in Syria and not keep trying to take us as far as we can, that if you have the ability, and this is what concerns me about the new president too, the ability to use those nuclear weapons, our world could be over as we know it. And it's very serious. So there's a lot we have to do there. You talk about ISIS. I specialize in a lot of that, in ISIS, and you had Al-Qaeda, who's still active. There are a lot of other groups that are out there. very serious, but we're getting headway against ISIS in Iraq. I was in Iraq last May and talking with the generals. And, you know, for the first time, you've got the Sunni, Shia, and Kurds working together to take out ISIS. And this Mosul, which is close to 1 million people, we're eventually, and we are training these people, we're helping them fight, and we're making headway. But the problem that I see in the area of ISIS and Iraq is as soon as we take it back, you're still going to have the same problems with the Sunnis, the Shia, and the Kurds not getting along. And, you know, all that we've done, all the American lives that are there, these battles go back thousands of years. And, you know, I honestly, if you're going to go to war anywhere, you have to develop a local government, you have to get the hearts and minds of the people, you have to provide education. These are the things you have to do. And we're not really doing that much in either Iraq or Afghanistan. So that's another, you know, serious issue that we have to deal with. We're lucky in the state of Maryland. NSA is the largest employer in our state, but it's the people that are surrounded, all the contractors and the jobs. There are thousands of jobs. And right now, a combatant command is a group that is assigned to a certain area. CENTCOM is Iraq and Afghanistan, the Middle East. You have PacificCom is China in that area. You have NORTHCOM, which is the United States. Because cyber is such a serious threat, it's just almost as serious as nuclear, but not as serious. But it's a war out there. And we have just lost probably $2 billion a year just on the the Chinese hacking. But Russia is so good at what they do. They're as good as we are. And so this whole cyber thing has to be pulled together, and we need a worldwide standard on how we're going to deal, you know, with the cyber. But the good news, if they're talking about making cybersecurity a combatant command, and that would be at NSA. And if that's at NSA, the jobs that would bring, and all of you, you know, when you have defense jobs, it's a multiplier effect. Everybody in this room could benefit from the new jobs that would come in this area. I represent not only Fort Meade and Aberdeen, and NSA, but I represent Aberdeen also, which is the testing center for the whole military. And a lot of innovation, all the innovation, a lot of it's coming into our state. So, you know, hopefully we will benefit, and that's going to help everybody that's here also. So we need to balance. We also need to take care of our cities. We need to take care of our kids. We need not cut programs Head Start, which is a great program, which is a program that gets kids before they even get to school, inner city kids. But what it also does, usually the profile is a single mother, and it gets that mother into job training, and it provides daycare while she's being trained. And then once they get that person a job, then they try to work the home ownership issue. You know, that's what's going to help and hopefully bring things together. So let me kind of conclude now. I have a lot more here. I'm not going to get into it. Sorry, Tara. I mean, my staff's there. They always tell me to finish it. But okay, you got it. I do want to say this, too, about some of the cabinet appointments. I can't say that I'm real happy about some in the area of national security, but I'm not upset about it. But the one I like the best is General Mattis. They call him Mad Dog, and he's not a mad dog. He really isn't. But I've worked with him. He was in charge of Iraq and Afghanistan. Maybe about 5, 6 years ago, I met with him in Bahrain. And we worked, my counterpart Mike Rogers and I work with him a lot because you'll find intelligence is probably the best defense against terrorism. So we can't have a military. And what NSA and CIA do for our military gives them so much head start on the type of things that they need to do. And anybody here in the military knows that. But Mattis is one of these individuals. He's a hard, tough Marine, but he's well respected, he's smart, and more importantly for me, he's extremely patriotic. And you know, if our president goes a little bit off or tries to do things that might not be in the best interest of our national security, Mad Dog Mattis will stop him. I don't care. He doesn't care who it is because it's about his country first. And I really applaud Trump for appointing Mattis in this position. I was a little upset with some of the people who didn't have experience. But then when Mattis was there, I slept a lot better the next night because you know him, and that's what you want. You want, and you have to have the check and balance between the military and the civilian. But I sent out a press release, and I'm going to try to support Mattis. The only thing that might hold him back, in order to have a civilian type of position like that, you need to be out of the military for 7 years. And he's only been out, I believe, for 5, so he has to get a waiver. So why don't I open up for questions now? If there's anything you want to talk about, I'll talk about it. Any hard questions, if I can't answer it, I'll tell you. Now, don't be shy. You know, usually you start with one. Doug, do you have a question? Oh, there's one. There you go. And say who you are.
Hi, I'm Bob David. Thank you for your talk.
Wait, you've got to market your company, so tell me who you're with.
I'm with MIMAR. We have a medication administration for minor service. My question is about gun control. And I always hear people talking, getting proactive about it after an event happens. But I never hear about any efforts for gun control for people that sell the guns illegally, that allow people that buy them illegally to use them. Perhaps that could be a better way to get guns off the street. I look at Chicago, 700 and some shootings last year, Baltimore City. I mean, it's an epidemic situation across this country. And perhaps a new perspective of how to control illegal guns would be better than trying to punish people that want to buy them legally.
All right. Well, first thing is a question, and it's just something that the way things are politically, it cannot be resolved the way I see it at this point. It's unfortunate. And let me tell you what my position is. First thing. Oh, you can't hear it? Did you hear the question, everybody?
Can you repeat for the video?
Oh, for the video. Oh, for the video. Oh, you didn't tell me we were being videoed. Oh, hi. The question basically was about the why can't we find another way to make sure that the people who are buying the guns are identified, I guess, or they have background checks. And by the way, I'm in favor of that. The problem, and did I state your question exactly how you would?
I'm not interested in background checks. I'm more interested in the people that sell the guns illegally.
Okay, the gun dealers.
Trunk open and sell the guns. I think there's enough regulations in place, but I don't think that people that have chosen not to follow the law in the first place are really going to go someplace where they have to apply for a background.
So you're saying basically, how do we stop it? Well, that's I don't know. I can't answer that because if you're going to do things illegally and you have these guns illegally, it's just going to have to be law enforcement who's going to be able to find out about it. I mean, that's the issue. But let me try to address, and now try to get back again. I don't know how to solve your problem other than law enforcement and intelligence to find out who the bad people are, working with gangs. You've got guns going to prison. You have a lot of things like that. First thing, this is just me. I believe that if you want to own a gun, you should be able to own a gun to protect your family. If you look at the history of how this gun issue started in our country, we wanted to make sure we had the militia to protect us. But sometimes things go to another level. In the beginning, most of my friends who were very active in NRA were more suburban, rural, and wanted to hunt and fight and fish. But I believe that if you want to have a gun to protect your family, you should be able to. But when the NRA got to another level, in my opinion, because they refused to talk about anything, the biggest issue that I have is the semi-automatic weapons that can come in here in this room right now and kill 15 of us just like that. And if you look at the children that were killed, you look at the incidents, you look at the people in Connecticut, you look at what happened in Florida, you look at what happened in other parts of our country, these are, and most of them are sick people. I mean, a lot of them have mental problems, but they had the ability to get these semi-automatic weapons. That's the area that I feel we need to focus on and to control. I don't see why that I think in the gun shows, that's another place where you can sell guns and there's not a lot of people who have been checked or background checks or whatever. And I think this polls show about 80% of the Americans, and I think about 70 or 60%, and don't quote me exactly on these figures, of NRA members understand that they don't have a problems with certain background checks, but don't go too far in what we're doing. But the NRA just won't sit down and negotiate anything. And unfortunately, they have a tremendous amount of power. And just like, and I don't say this in a negative way, I don't like raising taxes. I did everything as county executive not to, and I didn't have to. And we did extremely well in Baltimore County. We got AAA bond ratings, and we created a lot of jobs. But there's some things that are just certain elected officials will not pass because I think they're concerned about getting reelected. The NRA will target you, and your opponent will get tons of money. It's the same thing that you have Norquist as far as any type of tax situation at all. And that's why in my talk I talked about, in getting how do you get infrastructure money other than raising the gas tax, or John Delaney's plan, Congressman Delaney's plan, might find a way where the Republicans won't have to vote for a tax. So I don't think I answered your question completely, but I'm not sure if I have an answer, and that's probably why. But that's kind of my position on guns. I don't have a problem with the First Amendment. I think you need some regulation, but there are certain things out there that we have a serious problem in this country. We've got to deal with it. Yeah, back there and then here.
Yeah, Steve Goldberg. As an Army veteran and member of the Association of the United States Army at Fort Meade to support our troops, our military is at the lowest strength it's been in history, which is bad. I mean, carry a big stick, you don't have to use it to protect ourselves. And the military pay is terrible. We have veterans out there, or people active in the military, their families are on food stamps. And there's 1 to 2% pay hike. And these are guys out there putting their lives on the line. What can we do to bring their pay and their benefits up? We've got one of the guys out there as a sergeant with the pay raise he got last year, and the health care benefits they took away, he's clearing $40 less a month than he was before. Something's not right.
Well, first thing, the biggest problem we have now, and I don't disagree, I happen to specialize with the military, and I go to the front line. I was just in Afghanistan last summer, and here you had, and I met with the Marylanders there, by the way, to talk about the sacrifices. It was about 110 degrees. We're on flak jackets. You had to have a helmet because about once a week you have 15 mortars that are shot into your base. It's a forward operating base. And this is on the Afghan-Pakistan border. And we had about maybe 400 Americans, and we were training and working with the Afghans to try to help and take on the Taliban and the things we were doing. Those are sacrifices that most people in this country don't even think about anymore. And they're doing it every single day. And by the way, what upsets me about President-elect Trump knocking the CIA are out there just as much, and so are NSA. And they're working as a team. They're not called military, but they're right at those bases doing the same thing. So let's talk about a team of the United States of America and what we need to do. And unfortunately, because of this election, it was so negative and things that occurred there, the priorities weren't going there. Now, the good news, as you mentioned veterans in there too, the veterans were so big, so large for so long and didn't have the money that was needed. We're really focusing. In Baltimore, we were one of the worst. I have a bill in right now with a Republican from North Carolina to say that if you are a veteran and you can't get in to receive medical, that you have the ability right away to go to a private doctor. And these are the things that we're going to have to find ways. But here's the problem. The problem is always money. Now, anybody here know what sequestration is? Well, what sequestration is, it's one of the worst bills and laws that we have in our country right now. Sequestration literally puts a cap on everything we do. Now, you all are business people. When you're in business or you're managing a government, whatever, budgeting is about priorities. There's some things you just can't do anymore. But you've got to do the basics and the highest priority to keep your business going, your government going, or whatever. Well, no one ever thought, because the government was shut down, the fighting back and forth. I mean, I've never seen anything like this in my career in politics. This is so bad over there, and I'm not happy about it, and a lot of us aren't who are trying to work it out. But right now, sequestration is still the law. And the good news is in last December that we were able to at least get a 2-year waiver to get some more money into the military and more money. But then, and the only reason that was done is because then the outgoing Boehner, who was the speaker, violated the Hastert rule. Hastert rule means, Denny Hastert, that you'll never use a Democratic vote to win a bill, or you don't put a bill on the floor if you need Democratic votes to help it pass. Well, that's crazy. You should be able, it's not about party, folks, it's about United States of America. And that's what it should be. And it's not like that in a lot of arenas there. The good news on defense appropriations, and some of us who work in the intelligence, we understand this because we do it every day. So to get into your question, this sequestration rule cuts everything across the board, not about prioritization. And that we have got to get that through. Another issue we have too is earmarks. Earmarks get a bad rep. Earmarks are not bad at all. Earmarks were abused by certain members before there was where we had disclosure of what was going on. The bridge to nowhere. Well, that was somebody in leadership who, after the budget's passed, flopped it in and nobody saw it. That's the bridge to nowhere. Earmarks, I don't have the ability we have a lot of jobs coming to my district, the 95 corridor. When we beat Fort Monmouth and Aberdeen, we have thousands of jobs that were coming in. But with jobs and growth, you need infrastructure. And I have to go to the president and egg and beg and whatever you do to get money for my district. With an earmark, it's Congress controls the earmarks. They're all full disclosure, and my earmarks, before we took them away, were for road structures. They were for buildings that we needed from a military point of view. I represent the Port of Baltimore. What a great job creator that is. And if we needed things in security or we needed certain technology or equipment, that's what earmarks are for. Well, now I think, and then plus, it helps leadership get people under control so that the Tea Party or the lefties on my side don't stop everything, and then we're at total standstill. So these are some of the things that are going on. I'm going a little far, but I can only answer your question that way. Of course, we have to pay teachers more money too, but we can't. What teachers do for our youth, and you know, we don't pay teachers compared to what teachers are paid in Europe and other areas, but we just don't have the money. It's a matter of priorities. Yeah. No, wait. Let me get you, and then down there. Yeah.
Marty Schwartz.
Yeah, Marty.
I have 2 kids that are in the service, and one of the things that they talk about is the fact that the equipment that they have is that they literally band-aided together often. So it really kind of piggybacks on the question.
Did you hear the question about band-aiding? He has 2 kids in the service, or kids are not kids anymore, and they don't have the equipment. I'll tell you, it started out when we went into Iraq. And Iraq's the first, history will show whether that was a right or wrong thing to do. But when we went into Iraq, first time the United States of America ever attacked a country that didn't attack us. So what we did, we made some big mistakes. Right away, the first thing we did was get rid of the Iraqi army. Well, the Iraqi army were trained. They've been fighting Iran for years. And you know, they knew what they were doing. And as it turned out, when they all lost their jobs because we forced Sunni leadership, because of democracy, Sunni Shia leadership, that they were literally hired by Al-Qaeda, and they were the people that we were fighting for a long period of time. But where I'm getting to on the equipment with respect to your sons, our Humvees had no protection. They had no plates on them. And we weren't used to the IEDs that now we are. But when we first went over there, we're losing people left and right, or losing legs. You know, because we have somewhat better equipment, a lot of our people who come back who would normally be killed have lost arms and legs and that type of thing. So there were a group of us, and I was my second year, I think, in Congress a long time ago. We had to come together and fight like crazy just to get metal plates to be put on these Humvees to protect our troops who were getting blown up left and right from that thing. You're right. If you're going to put your people out of war and they're out there, you need to give them all the equipment that you can to protect them and their lives. And the good news is that's getting a lot better. It's still not where it needs to be. Yeah, over here. Both of you, either one.
Quick question. In regards to the Affordable Care Act and health care, how do you see it changing?
I think some people that I know in the business, again, my specialty is more in the, but you know, we all know these things in the defense side. Most of my insurance friends, and some that are very, very successful, say the first thing that this new administration has to do is do no harm. That should be the theme, do no harm. Now, you know, there's a lot of mistakes that were done as far as health care. But the good news, the camel's nose was in the tent. And the positive things were, number one, seniors. Seniors probably were paying more money for their drugs than they were paying for their rent or mortgages or whatever. That was resolved to an extent. Pre-existing conditions. If you had a heart problem and you had a cancer problem, it's not going to be covered. And then, so a lot of these things, now I held back. I was one of the last ones to vote for health care. Because I held out for small business. And my bill was 100, if you had 100 employees or less, you wouldn't be penalized for not providing health care. Finally, the number came down to 25, but that was the best that we could get, those of us who were on that. But what really bothered me about the whole health care situation, it's something that's never going to go away, but we voted 60 times to repeal health care, and not one time did Democrats and Republicans sit down and try to work it out and resolve it. That's the biggest problem that occurred with health care. There are a lot of issues. And I don't see Trump coming in right now and just disbanding it, because you have so many people now who are insured that wouldn't be insured. And, you know, we still paid for that. When these people who weren't insured were going to emergency rooms, it was coming out of our premiums. You don't realize it, probably close to $800 a year was coming on what we're paying for people that are going to. So it's a lot of issues that have to be resolved. It was a good political issue, you know, for the Republicans, and a lot of it did work. But now it's finding the best way to resolve it. And I guarantee you it just can't be cut, because then everybody goes on Medicaid. So if you don't pay for it one way, it's going to another way. The biggest problem we still have is that insurance, the more people that are out there in the pool, the cost should come down. And what we have, though, is a lot of seniors who need health care, and the younger generation still isn't signing up. They would probably pay the fine or whatever that may be. So there's a lot to do in that area. I know that some good people are working for it. I'll tell you who really knows health care and who works, and he's respected on both sides of the aisle, is Senator Ben Cardin. And probably in the state of Maryland, that's his expertise and what he looks into. But we'll see. Yeah.
I know that you're not on this committee, but maybe there'll be...
But I will have to vote on it, so I've got to know it all in the end.
Exactly. Wanda Smith, I'm the founder of Symphony Placements. We're a flexible staffing company, and I employ a lot of people. One of my largest frustrations as an employer is that there's approximately 100 million people in the United States, or 1/3 of our population, who receives at least one of the 80 welfare benefits in the United States at a cost of a minimum of $9,000 per person. I am faced daily with jobs that I can't fill where they're making $14 to $15 an hour. It used to be 5 years ago, if they lost their job. Today, they quit, they walk off. They won't go to work. And the first papers that are brought to me are not unemployment, but social services. I would like to see, because
Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say, why that's the case. Why they don't come back, because they're getting taken care of by the government?
Exactly,
is that, okay.
Exactly. And it's
But how much money are they getting, usually a year, annually?
The very minimum is $9,000 a person. If we take a person who goes through a medic school or to become a healthcare aide, we're looking at about a $30,000 education. They're trained for it, they go to school, and then they never work a day in their life. And our federal dollars are paying for that. I would like to see that we have...
That's what I want to hear. What?
More accountability.
Yeah. Okay, well, tell me how. Are you thinking more...
Well, there has to be a watchdog.
Okay, now...
It should be same as unemployment.
I agree with what you're saying, by the way.
Job, you're not entitled to get welfare if you walk off. Now, if you're laid off, different story. But I have people that walk off every day.
And that's unfortunate. But let me say this. If it's $9,000 they're getting, you can't live on $9,000, so I don't know what else they're doing.
They're receiving at least one benefit.
Okay. But here's a big problem we have anywhere, whether it's immigration or it's the amount of people. They don't have enough people to monitor, to hire people to see the fraud that's there. You know, almost every major department, we have people who try to investigate fraud. But when the numbers are so enormous, you know, and maybe again, with the new president, maybe that'll be a focal point that will shake things up to bring it back, as I've said, the balance, the governing of balance, which is really where you want to be on all sides of the aisle. It's a serious problem, and not only where you are, but in a lot of different reasons, including the medical side, which is a lot of fraud there, too.
Well, 25% of Maryland residents receive Medicaid.
Okay.
Between Prince George's County and Baltimore City.
Right. And there are a lot of other issues in the city other than that. There's a lot of culture change. There's a lot of, I mean, look, you're never going to improve a neighborhood when you have a boarded up home. If you don't get to the children first. Another issue is these kids, a lot of them who have attention deficit, dyslexic, they have special education problems. They become problems the first or second grade, and then they cause problems, and then they're kicked out or they're in trouble, when really all they need to do is to be identified to having this problem and having people work with them. And we let that go, and that could help crime problems down the road. There are so many of those type of issues, and that's why you can't put everything in defense either. You got to balance out some of these things. If you don't get to the problem early, you don't get to these kids early, you're going to keep having these issues over and over, and including the gang situation. Because I mean, look at the average family in the city, and how many fathers are living with a family. It's an inordinate amount. We have to deal with that. And we just can't say fix it. And it's got to be a teamwork thing. You have to have the educators involved, the social services involved. You need job training involved. You need in those communities, you need the police department to be trained to work with communities and not so that the communities are afraid or hate cops, because that isn't going to help either way. And then the cops become the victims too, and that's what's starting to happen right now. So there's a lot that has to be put into that area, and that's why you need the balance. Sure, we need defense. That's my specialty. But I also worked inner city when I was going to law school, East Side, West Side projects. I learned more there about the problems that need to be dealt with. We can live in suburbia and think, oh, they should work. They should, there's a lot of things that we have to start with that we aren't dealing with. And I hopefully, that, the new mayor right now will see that. I've had conversations with her. I have a very small part. I represent Anne Arundel, Harford, Howard County, Baltimore County, and the majority of my district's Baltimore County and Baltimore City. And I have a small part. I grew up in Baltimore City. I went to City College. And I do know some of those issues that have to be dealt with. But if we don't deal with the problems of our inner cities, and it's all over the country. Unfortunately, Baltimore got a bad rap because it looked like the whole town was on fire when they really was not. I went on CNN the next morning and scolded the media, saying, oh, you look like our town was on fire, and yet 7:30 in the morning, you have people in the community who are cleaning the streets up, and where's the camera there? And you don't see that. And these are the, media has created it. It's all about sensationalism on the national media now. It's not about facts anymore. And that's how we get an election like we just had. Anything else?
One more question, that's it.
Am I getting the hook? Good, okay. Oh, yeah.
You talked about,
Well, wait, two hands were up all the time. I got to do two.
you talked about lowering taxes.
Yeah.
For the corporations, but most small businesses are subchapter S, which means they fall under their personal tax rate. If you're going to make it on parity with corporations and subchapter S firms, then you've got to do something with the subchapter with the personal tax rate. Is there any talk of lowering the personal tax rate?
I think it's all one. Look, I'm not on that committee, and there's going to be a start. There's going to be a lot of those issues debated. But small business is not 90% of businesses in this country are small business. So small business will be looked after, and I'm one of them who's going to care. I had a small business. I mean, I made a paper. So I think whatever happens, it's to be competitive. But if you're going to cut taxes, you have to find a way to pay for it or to cut something. In other words, anytime if you build roads, how are you going to pay for it? Whatever you do, you have to say how you're going to pay for it, and that's part of the tax structure. Everybody's going to take a hit in certain things that are important to them. But, I just can't answer your question right now, but I'll stay involved with you once it gets started. I don't know where it's going right now. I just know that Trump has said this is what he wants to do, and let's find out a way to do it. That's the point. So I can't answer your question. I'd like to, yeah. And then that's the last one.
Dutch, thank you so much for coming.
Sure.
My name is Marie Hartman. I'm with Hartman Executive Advisors. We're an independent
Okay.
technology leadership.
You had two
advisor.
people here today from Hartman.
That's right.
She
I'm
won the
related
top
to
100 women.
Yeah, were you?
My question to you is that one of the industries we represent a lot is construction and real estate. And Construction and real estate. And one of the opportunities and challenges that we often see is that there's a huge skilled labor gap. So where a lot of companies they have pent up capacity because they can't find workers, and these workers are often paid on average $20+ on average an hour, so they're extremely well-paying jobs.
Yeah.
But yet there's so many people who don't have the ability to do these jobs. What is their and if we could find people to do those jobs, we could actually increase the middle income taxes coming from people who are actually getting paid these incredible jobs. And it's not just in construction and real estate, it's in skilled labor across healthcare, technology, business services, so there's a lot of industries. So I'm wondering, what is the government doing as a priority to focus on skilled labor?
Well, I'd like you to answer the question and recommend to me, because I really haven't dealt with this issue a lot. But let me say this, too, about middle America. If middle America starts making more money, they'll start spending more money, and our economy will start moving up big time. And
I think it's an area of opportunity.
now, and then you have the labor, non-labor issue that's out there, too. But that's it. But why don't you recommend to me, you're raising that as an issue, what would you like to see me look at?
Sure what you said.
Well, I think that number
I just said it. No, I'm teasing.
In the state of Maryland, you probably have seen the Augustine Commission.
Which is good.
Yes, and they raised it and had a very logical understanding around the context of the problem, plus also possible solutions on it.
Right, and that's what we have to talk about. Well, I'll tell you another person, Mike Gill, who's I've known for 30 years, and who was a former business person. I don't know if you know Mike Gill. He's in charge of economic development for the state of Maryland. He's calling it, what is he calling it now? Commerce, okay. And, you know, he's doing a great job. He's enthusiastic. I know when he first came in, I took him to maybe 90 of the people around NSA, more small business, to try to let him know this is an area we need to focus on in our state as far as jobs are concerned. So I think that our state is positioned pretty well. The only thing that could hurt our state right now is to have the government shut down again. Because, again, as I said before, whether you have, like we have a national we are the cyber security capital of the world in the 95 Corridor. Now, every time we have jobs like that are mostly well-paying jobs, it benefits probably everyone in this room one more. It's the multiplier effect, and that really makes a difference. So from your perspective, you know, I can't answer the question, but you can let my staff know recommendations, and I can make sure that we put that in there to try to evaluate what we're doing. Because, you know, I've learned this. I come from local government, and local government was where the rubber meets the road. When I go out in my district or I'll go to diners to work a diner, all the questions are not about federal issues. It's mostly about local issues. So if you can give me some recommendations on what we need to look at. And I think a lot of what we have to do is give incentives, tax incentives, incentives for people to do things. We're in a rut now, and we're going to move out of it. Okay, Doug, thank you. Take care.